received venture capital funding, and you received about $13 million. What was the pitch to VCs?
Oh, we didn't do any pitch.
No? They just went up to you? They just approached you?
Yeah, I mean, we talked to a few people, but I wouldn't say that I prepared anything formal for that. I don't know. I mean, I think that the attractive component of this was probably that the base was so localized and that we could target stuff and provide functionality for users on such a granular level. So people from Harvard can get specific stuff, both functionality and, I guess, advertising that's targeted to people at Harvard. And we have so much data about what people are doing on the site and how people are using it that it just makes it so that we can really enhance the experience and target stuff towards those people in ways that no one else has really been able to do before.
Can you talk about some ways that you're doing that? And I guess advertising is the model?
Advertising is the model, but I don't think we've arrived at what the final advertising solution is going to be. So right now, we're more focused on just building out the site and building features. And I mean, right now, almost 70% of our users come back every day, which is kind of ridiculous. And I mean, if we can keep that up for any period of time, then that's awesome. You know, and I don't necessarily expect to be able to keep that up permanently, but I mean, if we can keep that going, then that's really good.
Paul, we got a red on Overbeck.
We have a primary oxygen tank leak. We need to preserve his SOP.
Solution?
Emergency tie line. We hook him into another suit.
Do it, Doc.
Bill, this is Houston. You got a leak in your primary O2 tank.
I see it, Houston. What do we do?
You've got an emergency line in your Bliss. Hook it up with Randall's spare vent nozzle, and you'll share it till you get back to the Pilgrim.
Houston, is that sanitary?
In my own business, we've basically rethought how to deliver banking services around the customer and data, and we've made huge progress in proving that we can deliver the 10x benefit that we talked about.
What does that mean? Do you sell it to the big banks? Because if you look at Uber, Airbnb, it's things that directly impact me as a consumer.
Yep.
But actually, fintech, will it change fundamentally my experience with the bank? Is it challenger banks, or is it kind of the old way, but it's stuff that I don't realize is going?
So I think the trend is going to be that consumers are going to embrace services that make their lives much better. How do you make your life better in banking? Firstly, you make it just easier. All the paperwork and forms you have to fill out to get a mortgage, take that away. Secondarily, you make it instant because everybody wants their problems solved instantly. Thirdly, you make it more cost effective by better pricing decisions, eliminating things like fraud. And what our platform does is deliver that, but we do it through third parties. So we're a B2B2C business. Right. We can do it through banks, and we're mostly talking to banks at the moment. We can also do it through people who have big digitally engaged customer base.
But for me to get a mortgage easier or to get a decision quicker, does it not mean that I have to give up all of my data so the bank can make an informed decision in 2.5 seconds?
Somebody has to take your data, collect it, curate it, and put it together in a way that works for you. Now, if you think about how it works today, your data is fragmented and spread across hundreds of different sources, probably thousands of different sources: employment, education, healthcare, financial, all of those things. And those things are assembled rather painfully and slowly today through things like credit bureaus. I mean, credit bureaus have an imperfect snapshot of you as a credit risk. The more you can collect that data and make better decisions, the better the customer will be. At the moment, it's very difficult to do that because the data is so fragmented. But the new technologies allow those things to be collected and curated much more efficiently.
Hey, Commander?
Yeah?
Do you believe in UFOs at all, or?
Sure, I believe in UFOs.
You do?
Yeah. There's one following me.
Huh? Well, I get it. You're funny, Commander. Hey, Commander?
Yeah?
When I was a kid, at night I used to think there was a baker under my bed. Did you ever have anything under your bed?
No.
Well, did you ever bend down and look?
No.
Well, how do you know there wasn't a baker under your bed?
Randall, shut up.
We are living in a crazy kind of environment in terms of cryptocurrency, just speculation on the price of tokens and blockchains. do you guys think we're in 1999 right now? Is this the kind of a dot-com bubble that we're experiencing? So yeah, those two questions.
So I'll take the first one. You can
sure.
talk about .com. So first of all, the enterprise part I take as a compliment. I think that's precisely what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to build the first blockchain that can actually be used for real use cases. Like when you think of any distributed system, when you take a distributed systems class, the first thing your professor will tell you is like your distributed system is still only going to be as good as the nodes it runs on. And so if you think of Bitcoin miners, they're only incentivized to basically hash as efficiently as possible. They're not incentivized to provide physical security for the data centers. They're not incentivized to make decisions in the interest of the network. So they have a very pure incentive to just hash as much as possible, get paid, rinse and repeat. And in the case of Ripple, since the validators are chosen by the users, if a validator, for example, votes against a block size increase or something like that, if that were an issue in Ripple, then you would eventually find that users would no longer add that validator to their list, and so that validator would slowly lose influence. And so it's not as much of a system that's like tailored to users like Bitcoin is, where anyone can just run a node and it just auto-configures itself, connects to the network. You do have to do that validator selection manually. You have to think about, politically speaking, like which validators do you want to empower with your node, et cetera. So it is more targeted at like, actively being managed by companies, things of that nature. But I think the reason that makes a lot of sense is because when you actually go out there into the market, the evil people, you mentioned I'm an anarchist, so I really want to empower people, right? But the people that you got to fight are not all the banks. They're a few, very, very powerful players in the market that sort of take a little bit off the top. And those are the people that you want to bypass. And then everyone else, like there's a lot of small banks and regional banks and so on that we've talked to that are really trying to provide better user experience, they're really trying to provide lower fees, et cetera. Those are the companies that we want to work with and empower. And it's not just banks, it's payment providers, mobile money providers, and so on. So that's kind of where that different approach comes from. And on the centralization point, I would kind of say that there are a lot of different definitions of centralization, and we're sort of going down the list of meeting more and more of them as we progress. One of the ones that we don't meet yet is that we still run a majority of the trusted validators, but that's something that we're this year going to start rolling out in terms of we have already got a lot of third-party validators running, so people are going to start trusting them this year, and so this is just one more step to kind of go in that direction. And I think if I compare it to where we were with Bitcoin, like with Bitcoin, we had some level of decentralization, again, meeting some of the definitions, but not all. For instance, there's no geographic diversity. It's very concentrated in China right now. But we didn't have a very good roadmap in order to how to overcome that, because the system is really, it's just sort of the incentives are set up in a I would now say, bad way. Whereas with Ripple, we have the incentives are in order, and so it's just a matter of like, validators having the right amount of operational history so people actually start trusting them, and us having enough confidence in the software to actually continuously let go of more and more of the reins here. So I think it's for Ripple, it's a clearer roadmap to get to a very high level of decentralization. So.
Hey, Commander?
Yeah?
I seem to be experiencing these intense intestinal cramps.
Randall, I'm trying to conserve oxygen here.
But they hurt me so.
Keep it to yourself.
Ow. Ow, ow.
Wait a minute.
Ow. Ow.
I think if we stay on this heading for another 20 minutes, we'll see the pilgrim.
What? I didn't do anything.
Oh my God. No, 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 no. Hey, 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 hey. Don't do that. No, no, come on. Oh, man. Oh. Oh. Oh.
Was me.
What do you mean it wasn't you? We're 35 million miles from the nearest person!
Imagine if you're a Seagate or an Amazon or an Airbnb or an Uber. These companies all make large numbers of small payments. Amazon has thousands of merchants that they make payments to. Uber, if you're in the Philippines and you're a driver and you need money for milk, Uber would love you to drive for them and buy milk right that day. But they need efficient payments. They need payments that are as reliable as email for that to happen. And that doesn't exist. And each of these companies employs literally hundreds of people just in their payment division. And if you imagine if you ran a payment company, you would love to go to any of these new corporates and say, hey, fire your hundreds of payment people, we'll do all your payments. But there's nobody who can do that. And so if you imagine if I want to start a regional competitor to Airbnb, let's say I want to do Airbnb just in the Boston area, but I want to take incoming payments from all around the world. The solution can't be that I hire 100 payment engineers to make that business work. That can't be the right solution. So this is going to change. This is broken, and someone is going to fix it, and this is a tremendous opportunity.